You're watching Utah's #1 news station. This is 2 News at 5.
Hey, thanks for tuning in to 2 News at 5. A man who was shot and paralyzed in a neighborhood watch dispute a couple of years ago has now gone from victim to defendant in court.
39-year-old David Surbeck, who was paralyzed from the waist down in that shooting, is now on trial for having sex with a teenage girl.
Dan Rascone covering the trial. He joins us live. Dan, tell us what happened in court so far in this case.
Yeah, Mark and Sean, opening statements started just a couple of hours ago, and then after opening statements finished up, the first one to take the witness stand, the victim, 17-year-old victim. She is now 22 years old. Now, 39-year-old David Surbeck is charged with 3 counts of sexual activity of a minor. The alleged sexual activity happened during the summer of 2007. On the witness stand, the victim said Surbeck got to know her through her father, and he lured her in through her love for snakes and played off of her depression and her post-traumatic stress disorder that she says that she was going through. But Surbeck's attorney says the victim allegations are motivated by her civil lawsuit she filed and possibly attention. He kept asking the victim why she continued to go back to Surbeck time and time again, even though she was scared of him and knew that what they were doing was wrong. Now, one of the potential witnesses on the list is a woman who says she was raped by Surbeck when she was just 14-year-old. No charges have been brought on her case because the statute of limitations have run its course, but she believes Surbeck should be found guilty and be taken off the streets.
He threatened me all the time that he was going to kill me if it ever came out. He put a knife up to my throat one time. I think he needs to be locked up. He does not deserve to be out.
So that's not the victim here in this particular case. Again, that was another woman. She says when she was 14, David Surbeck raped her. Now, the victim in this case just got off of the stand a short time ago. They have one more witness taking the stand, and they'll wrap up for the day. And then they expect to come back here tomorrow to finish off the trial. So again, the defense saying that David Surbeck is innocent here, that the motivation from the victim may be because of her civil lawsuit, but that victim giving great detail as to what happened in those sexual encounters in regards to her situation, and that's why prosecutors say she has the evidence and they have the evidence that David Surbeck did have sexual relations with her. We'll have more coming up on 2 News at 6 o'clock. Mark, Shauna, back to you.
Dan, thanks.
Well, students at Viewmont High School are mourning the loss of a classmate.
I don't think anybody really expects this kind of thing to happen.
Police say 16-year-old Andrew Tolman was walking his bike across State Street at 400 West in Farmington when an SUV hit him last night. Tolman died from head trauma on the way to University Hospital. Viewmont High says they are offering grief counseling for students today, and police say they are still investigating the accident.
The Supreme Court wrapping up 3 days of hearings on the health care reform law today.
They're looking more closely at whether the rest of the law can survive if the individual mandate to buy insurance is declared unconstitutional. Danielle Nottingham reports from Washington.
Some Supreme Court justices seemed open to the idea that part of the Health Care Reform Act can survive even if they strike down its core. But they asked probing questions about what happens to the rest of the law if they determine the requirement for all Americans to buy insurance is unconstitutional.
My approach would say if you take the heart out of the statute's gone.
Attorneys general from dozens of states are pushing for the court to throw out the whole law.
It needs to go back to Congress with a clean slate to start over, even if there are good provisions in the bill.
The court also spent this third and final day of arguments looking into the section of the law requiring states to expand their Medicaid programs.
Many families take for granted they have health coverage, but there are a lot of low-income families that don't, and the Medicaid expansion in particular provides that kind of care.
The states argue the federal government has no right to force them to spend millions of dollars to expand Medicaid, but admit it was not the strongest part of their case.
I think even if the court did nothing more than strike down the individual mandate, it would be a very significant victory.
But a spokesman for the president is confident the justices will rule in the administration's favor.
There's no contingency plan that's in place. We're focused on implementing the law, and we are confident that the law is constitutional.
The justices are expected to issue their ruling in June. Danielle Nottingham, CBS News, the Supreme Court.
Well, not only is the outcome of this Supreme Court case expected to impact nearly all Americans, it is also expected to play a big role in the 2012 presidential election campaign.
And the Supreme Court agreed to hear this case in part because of a Utah law that was passed in 2010.
Yeah, the state law was sponsored by Carl Wimmer and was aimed against Obamacare. Without it and a similar law passed in the state of Idaho, the judges may have refused to actually hear this case.
Rod Decker's in our newsroom now. And Rod, why would the judges refuse to hear the case?
Well, it's called standing. That's the legal term. You have to be affected by a case in order to bring a suit. It has to actually have an effect on you. And the attorneys general said this has an effect because we have state laws. Look at Utah.
To know that this little flyover state of Utah helped carry the day, that's significant.
For the third day, demonstrators marched and shouted before the Supreme Court as inside, judges continued to hear arguments on whether Obamacare is constitutional. The suit was brought by 26 state attorneys general, including Utah's Mark Shurtleff, standing here in the back row. But the case may have depended on laws aimed against Obamacare passed in 2010 in Utah and Idaho.
No citizen of the state of Utah would be subject to an individual mandate.
When the lawsuit first began in Florida, the federal government said the attorneys general don't have a direct interest. They shouldn't be allowed to bring the suit. The judge pointed to the law passed here at the Utah State Legislature and said, no, the states have an interest in their laws. The suit can go forward.
In fact, that bill was cited by the Florida judge, Judge Roger Vinson, as giving all 26 states standing in the lawsuit against Obamacare.
So there is a possibility the Supreme Court will bring down Obamacare. And if so, the Utah legislature may have had a part in that case.
If it was not for the law that we passed here in Utah and was signed into law 24 hours before Obamacare was signed into law, this entire case may have foundered.
When it was passed, that bill kind of looked like a message bill. Sometimes the legislature sort of passes things to get things off their chest. But it turned out it may be really important. Back to the studio.
For sure. All right, Rod, thank you very much.
Well, the arm of the LDS Church that owns the City Creek Center has been set up as a nonprofit entity.
It will pay property and sales taxes, but maybe not federal income taxes.
Brian Malahy's on the story you'll only see here on 2 News. And Brian, what exactly does this mean for CCRI?
Well, Shauna and Mark, CCRI is a nonprofit, and it is classified, according to the IRS, as tax exempt. And as a nonprofit, CCRI says its return on investment here will go to the LDS Church.
Let's go shopping!
A ribbon-cutting ceremony, and thousands poured into the City Creek Center. In an email response to 2 News questions, CCRI, City Creek Reserve, Inc., said it's a nonprofit corporation that pays property and sales taxes. Much like a university endowment fund supports a university, any after-tax return on investment supports the religious, charitable, and educational mission of the LDS Church.
Let's try.
CCRI would not comment on whether it has a targeted or anticipated return on investment. On a City Creek Reserve website, mega shopping center developer Taubman is described as City Creek's owner-manager. In response to our email, CCRI spokesman Dale Bills said Taubman owns and operates the retail center under a long-term participating airspace lease.
When that expires, the title reverts back to the church, or the CCRI.
The arm of the church.
Stephen Anderson is a commercial appraiser in the Salt Lake County Assessor's Office. He's crunching numbers to determine what City Creek is worth to assess property taxes. And he says the Taubman lease lasts for roughly 30 years.
At the end of the day, CCRI owns everything.
And that includes the condominium projects, the big Promontory Tower, the Regent, and Richards Court. According to Anderson, the leases on those properties are 99 years. So if you buy a condominium at one of those City Creek projects, you actually get a 99-year lease, and that reverts back, he says, to CCRI, the arm of the LDS Church. Mark, Shauna, back to you.
All right, Brian, thank you very much. Utah, apparently one of the most religious states in the nation, but not the most religious. Mississippi has that distinction. It is the most religious U.S. state, with about 59% of people saying they are very religious. Utah takes the number 2 spot with about 57%, followed closely by Alabama with 50%. And you go down the list there, you can see Vermont with 23%, New Hampshire with 23%. But again, Salt Lake City and the state of Utah coming in second to Mississippi.
Well, thanks to you, our viewers, KUTV has been voted the best TV news station in Utah. This is the second year in a row 2 News has been voted the best TV station, and several of our colleagues were individually recognized in the 23rd annual Best of Utah City Weekly Awards. Mary Nichols was honored. Did you take your name out of there? Mark Cabell was honored as a Best Male News Anchor. Mary Nichols was honored as Inspirational News Anchor. Inspirational Newsy, I think is what they actually called it. Debbie Worthen voted Best Weather Reporter. David James was named Best Sports Anchor. And Christina Flores was honored for Best Pairing of TV Reporters with her husband, reporter Scott McCain of Fox 13. They did not have a category for Best Production Team, photographers, news producers.
No, and we know in our heart that without our crew, we wouldn't be nearly as successful as we are. So all the guys behind the cameras and in that room over there.
Are you crying?
Yeah.
He's touched.
Tears in your eyes?
And you're so humble. You took your name out of the script.
No, I think
That's
it
why
was
you're number
accidental. I saw it on the screen, though.
She put it in there, and I had pre-read it, and you took it out.
Hey, Melissa, I just gave the producers a nice compliment, so don't be mad at me in my ear right now.
You
okay?
deserve it. That's what
Okay.
makes you you. All right. Well, are you exercising and dieting, but still can't get rid of that jiggle? Can't get rid of that muffin top? A new treatment may help. The FDA has approved a new device which promises long-lasting treatment for cellulite.
And we're used to using debit cards for most everything, but now that gas prices are surging, paying cash might be a good option. I'll have the details coming up in a live report.
And we got a few raindrops falling on our camera outside right now. A lot of clouds moving in from the west and more showers tonight. And we'll tell you what's ahead for the weekend. You'll want to listen to that coming up.